So I was going to start a bit of my history is that I started off years ago. My dad built us an Apple II, and so I started off drawing on that with a joystick and these little buttons that would like leave imprints in your fingers as you drew. And then from that, I transitioned into sort of the 8-bit era with Deluxe Paint and stuff like that. All the while, I was always playing games. Like I loved the old Sierra and LucasArts games, and so a lot of my artwork is based on that. As a child, like these two were meant for a game that I don't know how I was intending on making it, but I drew these pictures, going, "Yeah, I'll make this awesome game. It'll be in the forest." And obviously, I'd never made a game at that point, because at that point you needed to write code to actually load an image, let alone the rest of the code. So from the 8-bit era, there was a film I quite liked as a child, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do stop motion. That's going to be the way forward, right? So I actually asked my mom. I'd read about Star Wars in a National Geographic article, and they talked about how they used baking powder to create all this snow, and it sounded awesome. So I was like, that's it, I'm doing stop motion. So I wrote on my mom's shopping list 2 boxes of baking soda, and she went out and sort of bought it and brought it back, and so I did my own stop motion. It was slightly off the quality I was looking for. So, so as an 11-year-old or whatever I was at the time, I decided, okay, that's it. Stop motion is not the future. So computers have undo. I'm going back to the computer. So I learned a program called Pavre to create some 3D graphics, and that was my first example. It wasn't really coding; it was sort of scripting to create stuff, and it is probably the worst way you would ever want to model something. This is sort of an example of how you'd model. You'd model like a box and a sphere, and this is a difference. So it means the sphere would cut a hole in the box. Absolutely horrible. It took me ages to create these images. Some of these images would render for like several days on my 286. But it was sort of the start, and it was fun. It was how I started sort of thinking, okay, if I want this result, I'd draw it on graph paper, I'd design it, and then I'd go, okay, this is what I need to do, and start thinking logically about the art I wanted to produce. From that, I went to animation school, and then taught myself Maya, and then I got a job as an animator for the next Harry Potter film, bizarrely. And first day on the job, they said, hey, welcome to your job. Slight change of plans. That job's not ready for you yet. So we need you to write some RenderMan shaders, which is a bit different from animation. So this is when I first started really programming, just in shaders. And I realized it is fun programming. I'd never seen it as creative, but the problem with this, for this movie, we needed to create icebergs that had subsurface scattering so the light would penetrate through. We needed reflections on the water, and we needed refraction. And none of it could we use ray tracing. At that point in time, ray tracing wasn't fast enough. So I had to develop techniques to do all of that without ray tracing. And it was really fun, because it was some interesting problems of how do I solve that. And yeah, it was sort of thinking logically with an artistic purpose in mind, but to create some pretty images. So it was really fun. After that job, I decided, I'm going to try and actually be an animator, back to what I was trying to do initially. And so I got a different job. And that's when I started learning Mel, because that job I got, and said, animation said, oh yeah, great, by the way, we don't have the character yet, we need you to build it. So I had to start rigging the character, and rigging characters in Maya, you really need to know Mel. So I started learning Mel as well, which is another scripting language, which is still very far away from what we do with Unity, but was another introduction into sort of coding practices. And maybe this is my first game. It's hard to say. So the game I made with Mel was that the longer you didn't move the mouse, if you didn't move the mouse or it didn't touch the keyboard, the background color of Maya would change. And it would change 60 times a second. So it was the purpose of the game was not to get a seizure while looking at Maya. And my colleague played it for a bit, and his graphics card blew up. So I was sort of told to stop making games and get back to work. So from that, I just sort of just avoided doing games, and I just sort of, all this time I'd been applying to game companies, trying to get a job, and I never could get a job in games, so I was like, all right, I'm just going to stay in film. Film's fun, so just started working in film. I focused more on that. And then after that, this is my reel now. I'm not sure if you can. So this, just a few years of doing all this kind of stuff, this is sort of where I'm at now visually. The polar bear is all CG, everything there is CG. This is all computer generated. So mostly throughout all of this, I've been working as an animator or as a rigger, occasionally writing render-in shaders, but mostly trying to keep to the artistic side of things. It was during the Rooster job that my PC died. And so I purchased, and that was when I needed to sort of, I purchased a Mac because I wanted to play with Unity. I wanted to get back into games. This is the closest I've come to making games, working on a film of a game. So actually, the film's not on here yet because it's not really been released everywhere. But my last film was a film called Trolljägaren, and I was pretty burnt out after that. So that's when I decided, okay, after this film, I'm just going to take a bit of time, try and recover, and I'm going to focus on making a game with Unity. And so that's how I got into this. I was burnt out. I'd done a lot. I was like, okay, I need time. I need to be creative. You know, working in film is fun, but you're always doing what someone else wants you to do. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. Whether it was fun or not, didn't matter. I just wanted to make a game for myself, really, and hopefully other people enjoy it. So I formed a company called Toxic Blob. It's just me, and I started making Sin or Win. This wasn't the first game I was going to make, but it's the game I'm making now. And I'll sort of explain why it's the game I'm making now. Because this is supposed to be the postmortem of Sin or Win. And one of the things I think everyone should take away is that programming is harder than you think. It's not impossible. It's not this black art. People definitely do it. But as an artist coming into it, I completely underestimated how much work it is. You know, you look at games, you're like, that's going to be easy. That's going to be easy. I can just guy jump like that and jump like that. You're like, no. So it's actually pretty hard. So also trying to balance my day job, a life, and making a game has meant that this actually isn't really postmortem, but it's a pre-postmortem. So hopefully the game will be out soon. I'm finishing a current job right now, hopefully next week, and then I'll be back on this game full-time for a few months. So hopefully for December I'll have it finished, but I guess as Valve says, it's done when it's done. But we'll see. So this is the trailer for the game, just to give you a sense. You probably couldn't see the iPad very well from where you're sitting. So you'll probably all recognize, this is Pablo Picasso. He's an absolutely superb artist, and I think he's sort of a good inspiration for sort of a theme of this talk, actually, and that, you know, as artists, we're all very capable of doing pretty cool stuff. You know, we can